This is WFYI News Now. It's May 12th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, an IU student and two advocacy groups are suing the state over a law that bans the use of student IDs for voting. Environmental justice employees at the EPA's regional office receive layoff notices. And we have a feature story from our education desk on how the sudden decision to close Union School Corporation leaves families and officials blindsided.
We are one of the wealthiest school districts in the state of Indiana. And so we are doing great. We're thriving where we are.
Those stories coming up. But first, city officials announced last week that Indianapolis infrastructure projects will receive more than $35 million in federal funds. WFYI's Jill Sheridan has more.
The Indianapolis Metropolitan Planning Organization distributes annual federal transportation funds for projects including bridges, roundabouts, and trails. One major project set aside $7 million for a new pedestrian bridge over 86th Street along the Monon Trail. The community has long lobbied for improvements at the dangerous intersection. The Department of Public Works will also use funding for a new nickel plate trail bridge over 82nd Street. More than $8 million is set aside for the final phase of construction of the Eagle Creek Greenway Trail. The largest sum, more than $10 million, will be spent on a Raymond Street bridge rehabilitation over Bean Creek on the city's south side. The funding will support projects over the next few years. I'm Jill Sheridan.
Two voter and civic advocacy groups and an Indiana University student are suing the state over a new law that bans the use of student IDs for voting. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith reports the suit alleges the measure signed into law last month severely burdens young people's ability to vote without any justification.
Student IDs from Indiana public colleges and universities have been used at polling places for 2 decades. Republicans this year banned their use as voter IDs because they said they want to ensure only people living in Indiana vote in Indiana elections. Count Us In and Women for Change Indiana, along with IU student Josh Montag, say that law violates the U.S. Constitution. Montag testified this session on the legislation, telling lawmakers it's a form of voter suppression.
If you want a better future in Indiana, college students are the way to do it. Restricting their rights and their ability to vote will only drive them away, and frankly, Indiana can't take that hit.
In a statement, Secretary of State Diego Morales says the new law ensures that every ID used at the polls is secure. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Brandon Smith at the State House.
All 18 environmental justice employees at the Regional Environmental Protection Agency office in Chicago have received layoff notices. It's part of the Trump administration's efforts to close EPA environmental justice offices around the country. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Rebecca Thiel reports these staff members help people suffering from a disproportionate amount of pollution.
In Indiana, that's often lower-income Black and brown residents. Nicole Cantello is president of the union that represents the regional EPA office. She says Indiana was also supposed to receive nearly $24 million in grants from the Environmental Justice Program. That money is earmarked for lead pipe replacements and projects to make cities and homeowners more resilient to things like flooding. Cantello says EPA's environmental justice staff also helped communities advocate for themselves when polluting facilities try to move in.
All that role that environmental justice folks had are now lost.
The director of the National NAACP Center for Environmental and Climate Justice issued a statement in response. She called the staff reductions a direct attack on local advocates' efforts to hold polluters more accountable and make more sustainable communities. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Rebecca Thiel.
About 100 of the regional office's probationary employees were fired in February. Cantello says they've since been hired back, but were put on paid administrative leave. And for our final story today, Indiana lawmakers recently approved a sweeping property tax law that includes a last-minute provision to shut down a rural school district in East Central Indiana. But there were no public hearings, no debate, and very few answers. WFYI's education reporter Rachel Fredette reports on how the sudden decision to close Union School Corporation has left families blindsided and officials scrambling for clarity.
At the Randolph County Fairgrounds, more than 150 people gathered to confront the lawmaker who helped end their local school district.
My concern here is the lack of transparency. If you were really trying to do what you thought was best for the communities, why was there no community discussion?
That's Stephanie Ward, a 1989 graduate of Union School Corporation. She's angry, not just about the move to close her alma mater, but how it happened.
You could not have been going through the proper channels for so few people to have known about this before. Can you explain that to me?
Republican Representative J.D. Prescott is sitting across from Ward.
I was more than prepared to explain that, but unfortunately, due to Union School Corporation putting out a statement that they are suing based on that reason, I will not be able to comment to that.
The crowd is on Ward's side. She pleads with her lawmaker for clarity in the future.
This is about transparency. If you're going to represent us, all we're asking is for more transparency.
Union Schools is a rural district based in the tiny town of Modoc in Randolph County. They educate more than 290 students in person and about 7,500 through virtual programs. The law requires Union to close by 2027. The area will be split among two other school corporations. Prescott says he's shutting down the district because of failing test scores and Union families choosing to leave.
You just couldn't continue to ignore the situation, and so there's...
Before the law was passed, some lawmakers questioned it. During a debate in the Indiana State House, Democratic Senator Andrea Hunley challenged her colleagues.
Is this the way that we're going to do business from now on, that we can just simply amend into a piece of legislation the closure of an entire school district, and that we can do that without regard for public hearing or process?
This is not the first time lawmakers took action to address troubled school districts. State lawmakers intervened in the Gary and Muncie school districts in the past decade. There was robust public debate in both districts ahead of the votes on the legislation.
We have 290 other school districts in the state, and they're all saying, so what's the threshold? What's the line?
That's Chris Lagoni. He leads the Indiana Rural Schools Association. Lagoni says other rural school districts worry this will happen to them.
We would just like some very clear parameters to say, this is the performance expectation.
Galen Mast doesn't know why Union's closure was tucked into the legislation, but the district superintendent has an idea, and it's not test scores. It's because Union is making money. The district's contractor, Indiana Digital Learning School, offers virtual classes to students. That partnership earns Union about $3 million annually.
We are one of the wealthiest school districts in the state of Indiana, and so we are doing great. We're thriving.
Mast also thinks virtual schools, like Union's, attract students from other districts and charter schools. He says that could be a reason some want to close their doors.
The INDLS is taking funding away from local communities.
Mast is worried about how this could impact his students and families, like Macy Adams. Adams stood up at the fairgrounds to share what Union means to her. Adams is about to finish high school. She says losing her school district would devastate the place she proudly calls home.
Dissolving Union is not just closing a school, but stealing our community's heartbeat. It would break us. Yes.
Union's fate appears sealed, but leaders say they intend to fight the law. I'm Rachel Fredette.
Here's an update to that story. Union Schools filed a lawsuit Thursday, May 8th against the state and Governor Mike Braun to stop the closure of the district. For more on this story, go to our website at WFYI.org. That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin and Zach Bundy, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.